So the distinction between becoming aware of your body as like through a judgment or through your mind, right? As opposed, like as a like an activity of the mind, as opposed to as opposed to receiving an action, right? Or receiving. So one of the things that's happening when you're doing yoga poses is I think that over time, one of the real benefits, not the right word, but training that that asana practice does is it starts to show you the multi-leveled simultaneous relationship between your mind and your body's movement, right? And that you start to recognize more. So like, for example, I want you to just, without moving anything, which is virtually impossible, right? Physically anyway. Feel without moving or pressing anything. Try to feel the bottoms of your feet, right? And now to make it even worse, now without moving anything, or harder, not worse, try to find where your pinky toe is. So like now without moving, right? When you go to where your pinky toe is and there's no way to confirm whether you've had success or not. Okay, like, so what you would do is if you're trying to find your pinky toe, you kind of put your mind somewhere you think you are, and then you'd press down with your pinky toe to make sure that you were correct, right? So I know I'm talking weird right off the bat, but this will actually make sense. So that the mind actually continually needs confirmation of success. Okay, now what's important is, can you feel into parts of your body without confirmation where you don't think you're just imagining a part of your body, right? So it's like, and this is a really important deep point, right? Is that, that there's a way that you can activate presence within your body without the extra layer of making it tangibly physical, and knowing that that's different than imagination. Okay, so I know what I just said sounds really confusing, and in a way the words don't help, but they kind of do if you recognize that the relationship between mind and body has many more subtle avenues between the two. And what your practice is like helping you see is the different ways that mind enters, finds parts of your body, confirms its presence, what it is to have a pose travel through you. All of these things depend on your mind, body, the avenues between mind and body, and to include your consciousness, getting more and more subtle. So sit up straight and tall. And again, like in a way, when I ask you this to feel and pay attention to your exhale and let your mind not be so active, which is part of why I ask you to pay more attention to your exhale. It's kind of like you're clearing the deck, right? You're like clearing, making space, right? So just pay attention to your exhale. Let some things go. Let there be more inward quiet. Now, before you start moving, try to allow in the whole room, like not the objects in it, but the fact that you're in a wider presence than just where your body is. So this is part of where proprioception comes from, but So for me to do that well, I'm going to immediately start softening my organs of perception, like my temples, my jaw, the inside of my mouth. And I'm going to let in what was already true, which is that you're part of something. Remember, your mind's going to have to separate you in order to confirm for its own reasons, right? But being connected requires your mind to quiet. But you can't force a mind to quiet. You have to let it dissolve. Feel. So we're going more towards a feeling relationship to your body as opposed to a judging one. So now start to feel your feet on the floor again and activate a little bit. Put a little bit more downward pressure, but do it in a more balanced way. Instead of just pushing your feet down, ground your sitting bones, extend from the inner groin to the inner knee, and press down to the inner heel. So you're activating against this backdrop of emptiness. So in order for me to feel the background of emptiness in the middle of the activation, I almost have to let in kind of analogously like my peripheral vision, what's coming from the edges, right? From the edges to your brain. So I'm not talking visual, but I'm using that as a metaphor. So as I hit down, I'm going to start to rise up and lift up to the chest. So you're trying to ground and expand. Hopefully that started to affect your breath, right? And remember, on exhalation, you don't have to give up anything. Your exhalation is going to feed action in your asana. So I'm feeling my feet, feeling my sitting bones, lifting my chest, inhaling and exhaling, dropping the shoulder blades a little bit, but extending my spine, coming more into alertness, where alertness shouldn't be so hard that it makes you strain. But you're trying to include your body in a sense of alertness, not just the focus of your empty mind. Even though you're at an increased level of inward attention, allow in the whole room. Let go of your day. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good. And then release. Take your sternum up towards your chin down over your sternum. So you're accentuating an inner strength with a surrendering, humble drop of the chin. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So one of the things that, do you know you're strong before you start to activate, right? Do you start your yoga poses and your yoga practice knowing that, I don't just mean physically strong, but that you actually are starting from a connected sense of strength? Okay, so it turns out that asana shows you that a connected sense of strength also depends on a sense of physical balance and safety. Okay, so everyone kind of lean out, balance, don't fall over. But so when I'm off over this way and I'm like I can't be as connected because my conditions of safety have been violated, right? I'm having to hold myself up, right? But then I can take this position and ground it and start to make it safer again, right? By actually activating and then release. But this idea that you're balanced, then go the other way. A sense of balance. So if I do it, um, if I do it without without the activation, I just kind of, this doesn't feel great. It's fine, but now I'm gonna make it be more grounded, right? And then release. And so without taking your head too far back, I want you just to open up the front of your chest again. This idea of creating this. I'm gonna go back over my chair just a little bit, not a big bit, right? Because right now I'm just trying to get this feeling of the fact that I'm not as trapped in my seated position, that there's possibility. So I'm coming forward now. So this is again just that warm up idea of like, and I'm gonna kind of go, I'm back this way, but now I'm like putting one knee forward and then the other, and like kind of going back and forth while my chest is open. And if it's okay with your neck, go up and over a little bit, even open a little bit more, and then exhale and come forward, right? And all we're trying to do is get lightly, take your left arm up over your head, just kind of get this sense of your body starting to get the spaces between the muscles, right? Like, so you're just using a little bit of physical stretch to actually create a sense of lightness, right? So remember, people think that yoga is about being more flexible and stuff. And no, flexibility is a consequence. What you want is the spaces and the consciousness that comes from being slightly more flexible. One of the interesting things is when I teach traditional students, some of the dullest students I've ever had have been the most flexible, right? Because they're not getting the spaces. Go again. Like, it's about getting these spaces open, right? Because that's going to be part of what makes your breath have more quality. It's the spaces. It's not just the actions, right? So then you go on the other way. And then, of course, because I know how to build yoga poses, come back to center. We're going to go the first side. And then again, like this idea of being able to build into more yoga from stretching. So we're going to take the arm over and twist up a little bit, right? So you're just also doing this, creating a whole different type of space, right? Now, when I take my arm farther back, I actually lose the underside down here, right? Okay, so what? I'm making spaces at this point. And then go the other way and over, and then open. So you're just trying to open stuff up. And then come back to center. Notice I reposition because I want to get symmetrical so I can let in the openness and ground it. And again, because I'm just on this track of wanting there to be more space rather than compression in my low back, I want you to lift up. Let there be traction, let your sits bones hang, and then watch the compression again. Again, we're just trying to get things kind of like warmed up. And then again, up, and then back down. And then right away, open, get the muscle. So when I take my arm over my head bent, right, this stuff opens, but I don't get it all over my body. So now I'm going to straighten my arm. And as I straighten my arm, I'm going to try to push down through my sitting bones. So now it's not just that you're, and then come back to center. You're not just feeling the sense of openness. Now you're feeling the openness in using it to move through your body differently. Right. So I'm going to go again over, and I want to keep it bent. Now I'm just going to go straight and add the clarity that actually comes. Right. So we're not doing the whole pose yet. We're just like noticing from side to side what it is to move towards a yoga pose. Right. So over again, getting that physical stretch, getting it open a little bit, and then bring it into more attention. Because remember, one of the limbs of yoga is concentration. I want you to get off and then back center I want you to get off the idea that concentration means exclusively mental, right? That you concentrate by furrowing your brow. That's not what concentration is in an asana, right? So again, I'm feeling the openness. I'm bringing a level of focus to it, right? By straightening my arm. And I'm noticing the difference, right? When my body, and then come on back up, becomes part of what I'm calling concentration. Okay, so the unity between mind and body start to be what my attention is. So sit symmetrically and take a couple of breaths. So now, as you sit here, and again, I have scoliosis more than most of you, so, but I can tell which breastbone is dropped. Can you? On your own body, right? So I want you to put your hands in your knees, right? And I want you to try to like notice which one's dropped, straighten, and as you straighten, push equally against each knee. So for me to get the one that's dropped, I'm going to actually engage more of my hand into that knee. So the support for this to lift actually is, so I'm not equally pressing on each knee. I'm actually trying to help the difference in the variability between sides, help me counteract the gravity. And then breathe. Try to take a more equal inhalation and exhalation, side to side. Find the spots that you're not breathing into. That's where it is for me. Good. And then release, right? Backing up over your chair again. Come forward. Now take some time here. So again, I'm trying to create lightness, a sense of lightness in my spine, and therefore an extra level of groundedness in my legs. Okay, so now I'm leaning forward. I'm elongating my low back. Because I'm pressing on my feet, there's more weight on my feet. Okay, now I want to equalize that up and down each side of my spine and lift the sternum. So I'm just like feeling this. And then naturally I start to correct. My rib cage is slightly turned more than most of you, so the alignment actually starts to emerge. My body just wants to move. Good, and then release. And so if you have a table in front of you, if not, just come down on your forearms. But if you have a table in front of you, right, come down on your elbows. Okay, and now, I gotta be careful. So what I want is to get more length. So for those of you that aren't actually being able to lean on a table, take one arm underneath the other, right? And pull your elbow away from your shoulder as you lift your chest. Okay, so if you're doing it without a table, you're going like this and you're lifting your chest. If you've got a table, you're coming down onto the table, right? Grounding your elbows and lengthening the underside of lengthening your triceps. So ground your shoulder blades down and lengthen through your tricep to the elbow and lift your sternum, right? So now you're breathing into an activation. So right away, I start to notice how my head is tilted because now I've got structure around where my neck is. So my mind can start to realize that I've been letting gravity turn my head, right? So I'm making this a pose. And now I want to find both sitting bones in both feet. And I want to breathe equally for all of those points that my mind is being aware of now. All those points were always coming to my brain. My mind just Wasn't taking the time to feel them. Good, and then release. And so we're all gonna do it without the table. All right, so, and it's different. So I gotta get more balance. So you're gonna take right here, right? And you're gonna pull out. But what's key is I want you to, as you're pulling your elbow out, I want you to ground your inner edge of your shoulder blade, right? So in a yoga pose, one of the principles is that you're almost never moving in just one direction, right? That will just be stretching, right? To make this action go from a stretch to yoga, I got to ground my shoulder blade and pull out on my tricep. I have to do both. Good, and then release. Always in at least two directions. So I have to do all this stuff to get balance. Some of you don't have to do that as much, right? So I'm pulling out my elbow and I'm grounding my shoulder blade. Good, and then release. So when I don't ground my shoulder blade, so just go to the first side and just pull it on your elbow. When I don't ground my shoulder blade, see, it doesn't change my base, it pulls away from my base. Now I'm gonna ground in and pull out on my elbow and put more engagement in my palm and fingers, right? Instead of just this. Now, this is gonna be harder for me. If you have balance, I want you to release and push in on your elbow and push into your hand as a way of grounding your elbow and your shoulder blade. So I'm pushing into my own body here. So in order to put my hand into this and my elbow into my hand, I've got to ground down through my shoulder blade, down to my sitting bone, and breathe, and then release. Same thing on the other side. So now I do this. I push into my hand. I ground back with my hand to get my shoulder blade, keeping it having intensity in my shoulder blade. I lift my sternum. I feel my sitting bones. Good, and then release. So now we're heading towards some of the activation that might happen in handstand and headstand, right? But we're just heading that direction. So as we just did this kind of grounded energy, now I just want to do something that's a little bit more of a stretch. So take your left arm up. So I got to be careful on this because of how sore my freaking shoulder is, but I'm going to go towards the midline. But now I don't want to just move my outside of my elbow towards the midline. I want to keep my shoulder blade grounded and move it across. Might even support it here, but now instead of grounding it, I'm just trying to have it move across. So I want you to feel a stretch as you pull it towards the midline on the inner edge of your back of your shoulder blade, right? As you pull it across. Good, and then release. Remember, we're trying to go from stretching to yoga, right? And so now I'm going to pull it across. Feel that stretch. So this first time, I'm just trying to feel the stretch of that, right? And get those muscles to open. And then I'm going to release. On this next time through, we're going to try to make it more yoga, right? So grab the first side, pull it across, but now really ground your shoulder blade down, right? Pull it across into a grounded thing. Now lift your sternum, drop both your shoulder blades. Keep this, now I'm going to put more attention here on my hand, right? So now I'm not just trying to stretch those muscles. I'm trying to ground and feel and then release. And so again, this will just be stretching it. We're not just stretching it this time. We're putting it into traction. We're keeping the shoulder, we're bringing it across, right? And we're grounding down through the shoulder blade, lifting the sternum, feeling the sitting bones, making this inform the whole sense of presence in your whole body. Good, and then release. Kare, do you have a question? I see your hand up. I'm not sure if you meant to put your hand up. Okay, you can come back to it whenever you want, just ask it. All right, so now there's a pose So, well, it doesn't matter the Sanskrit name. Take the arm to the midline and then take the other arm underneath it. So some of you can bring your palms together. I don't want to. You would see my rotator cuff literally just pop out of my shoulder, right? So I'm not going to do that. But what I want you to do is has this position go underneath, which is a sense of grounding, right? And I want you to lift your sternum, pulling this across, grounding down through your sitting bone, lifting up with your chest. Take a couple of breaths. Good, and then release. And then we're going to go on this other one. I'm going to take it towards the midline. See, this one I can go underneath farther. Right? And I'm going to go underneath and try to, some of you can connect your palms. Now I've got this big pull on the shoulder blade to stretch. But wait, keep your hands up. I just lost my balance. The task is to do the grounding element in this pose. Right? So I'm going to drop my shoulder blades, keeping that stretch on my shoulder, but lifting my sternum, feeling my sitting bones. Good, and then release. I hope you're feeling some stretch across here, right? But what I'm trying to contrast in your ability to pick up sensation is there's that loudness and there's an inner side edge of it. Again, remember the yoga is trying to train your mind to receive more of the layers of your experience, right? And like when I say, we'll go to the first side again. When I say the mind's the last of the party, I actually mean it, right? So now I'm not worried that I can't do as much with this shoulder because of how it's damaged. But so now I'm pulling it across, lifting my sternum, feeling this stretch, making that be part of the experience, but not the leading edge of the experience. Trying to keep equanimity between each foot, each sitting bone, lifting the sternum. Good. And then release. I'm going to shake that out because that's a big one for my shoulder. And I want you to know when you've got something that needs to kind of move out, do it. Take care of your own body, right? So now I'm going across, going under again. Feeling the one level of stretch, the loud one, looking for more inward. Good, and then release. So now I want us to practice this base now. So for those of you that do have an easy accessible table, right? You do that, interlock your fingers. But for those of you that don't, like, can I use your own lap? I'm gonna come down. So I want this same type of, actually before you start, just sit up for a second. So I don't know about you, but I feel from this stretching, I can feel where the muscles have stretched, but I also feel, I don't know if I call it lightness, a little bit of fatigue, I'm not sure. I want to make sure I connect that to my sitting bones and to my feet. I just earned something, right? Instead of just letting it be about a stretch of a muscle, I'm wanting to bring it into my midline and integrate it more deeply. So I'm sitting here for a second, trying to equalize, right? Trying to feel. Because when I come down and use my table or my thighs, I want to make sure I can get that equanimity, right? To be part of my pose. Now I'm going to come down like this, and I'm going to interlock my fingers. So if you can, so that would be like this, right? So, like that. And so, well, we'll just do that for now. Okay, so I'm going to come forward. I'm going to be interlocking my fingers here, right? But now we just done a whole bunch of stuff, right? With the forearms and pressure and lengthening the tricep and lifting the sternum. all those things. This is all part of headstand, right? So now I want you to ground your own forearms down, your elbows down, lengthen the tricep, lengthen as if you could grow this upper arm in both directions, right? And lift your chest. So as you really get more contact with your own lap, or the table would be a little bit better in this case, right? I want you to lift your chest and feel all that action. I hope you're working right now. Like I'm doing like an asymmetric exercise basically, right? With my arms, right? But now I want to make sure I'm hitting down through my sitting bones and down through my feet as my chest lifts. So I'm trying to really activate this in every direction through my body. Good, and then release. So now I want to add something subtle about the hand grip, right? So bring your hands together if you can like this, right? And now if I just squeeze my fingers together, so if you can put your hands on your lap or on the table, right? If I just squeeze my fingers together, which would happen if I were upside down, like, can you feel how it just locks into your shoulders, right? You can see the outer tip of your shoulders, right? So now instead, I want you to bring your webs of your fingers together, but reach across as if you could touch the opposite wrist, right? So I'm not just squeezing them together, I'm lengthening, right, as the webs go together. And feel that, what that does to how your upper shoulders work, right? So you're adding a subtlety to enhance full-bodied awareness through your whole body. Good, and then release. So now everyone do it on your lap, which is a little bit harder because you don't have as much gravity to work in opposition against. So now, here, let me drop my camera here. Right, so now I'm down like this, I'm going like this, and we've spent a lot of time on the forearms, on the legs and stuff. But now I want to keep that. I want to press my elbows down, lift out of the elbow, so I'm pressing away and into it. Now I want to really activate the webs of my fingers, reaching my fingertips to the opposite wrist. Lift my chest, broaden across my sacrum, press down through my sitting bones, and activate down through the inner heel. Breathe. Good, and then release. So now one of the more overt ways you do this stuff for headstand is take your left arm out. Bring it down your back. So here's where if you can balance and turn your elbow in, right? But here I want it to be real close to your head. So I'm down my back and I turned it in, but now I'm gonna lift my sternum. So as soon as I lift my sternum, energy is going this way up my arm, but my shoulder blade's going down, right? So I'm activating both. And then release. I gotta go slow through my shoulder there, not move too fast, right? Take the other arm up, bring it down, turn it towards the midline, drop the shoulder blade down. So I was leaning back in my chair for balance on this first time because I'm learning the actions. And then I'm gonna release. Now this time I'm gonna go to the first side, but I'm gonna lean forward. So I'm using this arm because I don't have the same amount of trunk control most of you do. I have to pull myself up. I want to be slightly forward, right? And now I really want to activate. Now lengthen up through the elbow tip, drop the shoulder blade down. Lift the chest, feel the sitting bones down, feel the feet. Good. Move slow if you need to out of your shoulder. Take your other arm up, bring it up. I'm leaning forward again. So in other words, I'm bringing more alertness to my spine because I'm leaning forward. Rotate the elbow in, lengthen from the armpit to the elbow tip. Drop the shoulder blade. Feel both sides of your rib cage. Good, and then release. First side again. So I'm not going to be able to lean forward, right? Because I will fall right off balance. If you can be slightly forward, great. But I want you to do this, and then I want you to put your hand up on your elbow, right? And I want you to turn it in, push into your own hand with your forearm. So what I'm going to do, because I can't lean forward at the same time, I'm going to feel this and then release and try to keep the memory of having that pressure, right? So I'm doing it in two parts rather than one. Good, and then release. Take the other arm up, down. I'm gonna push, get that imprint of what it feels like, do it without it being there, and then come forward and really hit down through my whole body as I lengthen from my armpit to my elbow. Good, and then release. So now those of you that can do it with both sides, I'm gonna try it, but for me to do it, I'm gonna have to go back behind the balance point because I don't have enough balance. But now take both arms up, right? Now lengthen both arms from the armpit to the elbow tip. Okay? Feel that pressure against your forearms to drop your shoulder blades more. Lift up with your sternum. Hit down with your sitting bones. Good, and then release. Take your arms down. So now, the idea of an inversion is actually to be able to move awareness from the head to the feet. Now, the way that a traditional yoga pose does this is it flips you upside down. So your head's below and your feet are above. Then you have the extra drama and challenge of having to work against gravity to learn how to extend upward, right? But obviously you and I aren't going upside down. But that doesn't mean we can't work hard to get the energy to move this way, right? Apana, right? So you're working really hard to get, instead of always, if you're sitting all the time, we're always drawing up. We're not that often drawing down or moving down. All right, so now take both your arms up, right? And so you're pushing up, dropping your shoulder blade down, feeling your sitting bones, elbows in. So now I have to figure out for my mind to participate. Remember, when I go to move my legs, I'm paralyzed, so I don't get the pleasure or the response that I'm looking for. So I got to feel what this is and release. I'm going to put both hands on my knees, press into my knees, right, to lift my chest and now hit down through my feet. So I'm actually beating together different sensations, right? So I'm getting my legs more. I'm closing my eyes right now because I really want to feel this. And then I'm going to release and go straight to up here. I'm going to keep that calming fact of pushing on my own knees. I'm going to start to activate this pose, but let the quietness of my hands on my knees make my effort more streamlined into the quiet created by pressuring my knees. Good, and then release. So let me try to give definition to what I'm saying, quietness. So although when you pull on your own knees, you lift your chest, that seems like loud. Pushing on your own knees, but notice what that does. And I'm just trying to put a word here. When I do that, it makes me lift my chest and I feel the fire this way. But it's partly because I feel a deeper level of connected quiet in my legs. So I'm paying attention to that. So as you press in on your knees and lift your chest, figure out how to extend down through your feet. So although your one force is traveling this way, you're learning to move that way. Good, and then release. I got to stay very connected in my movements. Now I'm going back up, bringing the elbows in. feeling the imprint of quiet strength. I don't get to control it, I get to feel it. And then lengthen from the armpit to the elbow. Press up, hit down, and go down through your legs, down through your inner heel. Keep your chest lifted. Breathe. Good, and then release. So one of the things that while you practice at home is you get to do things over and over again, and you can start like noticing more. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes it helps doing yoga into a mirror or whatever. But this time, I suppose you can't see yourself while you're watching me spotlighted, but try to figure out, like I looked up at the screen and saw when you're with your arms over your head, almost everybody had one shoulder higher than the other. Okay, so I want you, and there's probably a good physical reason for that, right? But this time, I want you to add another layer. So you're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna push on the knees. The other thing is to make sure, push equally on your knees so you get that imprint. And we want the length in your spine, because without this length, you can't go down through the core of your being, right? So you're although you're pulling in and lifting this way, you're doing that so you can go down this way. So feel that. And as you're doing this, find a way to, although your chest is lifting, to root down through the core channel, through your feet as you're lifting up. This is part of the multi-layer of an inversion. And then release. Arms up, bring them in. Add your breath. Down and up. Is one shoulder working more than the other? Oh yeah. So I'm not having as much space in my left shoulder blade. So I'm like trying to fix that by moving my arms differently. And I'm breathing. If you're just hanging out here and not working, you're not doing what I'm asking. Like that I'm talking right now is really freaking hard because of how hard I'm working. Good, and then release. Come on down. Now just lean forward, put your forearms on your thighs. So to me, that was really hard work. So now I'm trying to ground and feel. So what's interesting, although I've been practicing or teaching this as a very active inward action, this grounding that you're feeling now with your hands together like handstand or headstand and your forearms, right? Now very lightly start to bring, remember the webs of your fingers, feel each sitting bone, and very gently start to feel the whole outline of the pose again. It's going to be easier to breathe here for the whole pose. What's very interesting about Shirsasana headstand is that the balancing part is perhaps the most nourishing part. So as I'm not having my arms over my head, I'm like this, I'm trying to find that inward sense of balance. Because as soon as I take my arms up over my head, I'm not going to stay as connected to this level. So I'm marking myself, I'm imprinting myself. And then back up, take your arms up over your head, interlock them behind your back. So now can I find that, and I'm activating everything, right? All the class. I'm lengthening from my armpit to my elbow. My forearms are going towards the ceiling, my shoulder blades are going down. I'm finding my sitting bones. I'm finding the inner edge of my heels. Now I'm taking that inward part, the more meditative part, and I'm going to try to integrate it into my pose. Good, and then release. Now take your left hand outside your right leg. So remember, I've talked a lot about the shoulder stand being the queen of all yoga poses. Headstand being the king of all yoga poses. So right here, as I have one leg, one arm out, I'm actually grounding myself. I'm wanting to find that inward part that we just practiced in headstand to go down through my base, right? So it's not just that I'm asking to get down through your sitting bones and down through your inner groin, your inner heel, right? I'm actually asking you to go even deeper and then take your arm behind you. Lift your chest. Inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. So as I'm working this pose, I'm staying connected. Of course, you're lifting your chest and rolling your shoulder blades back, but there's another layer that's going down through your feet, and it's more meditative than you think. And then lift under the collarbones, raise your head up and turn your head. Good, and then come on back to center. One of the reasons why we miss all the different layers that are in every movement is because we're in a rush, right? We don't take the time. Our minds are slow. Our minds need contrast in order to hear the differences, right? And so sit in the center. So now you're gonna take again the other hand, so your right hand over, and you're gonna stay here for a second. And you're gonna look for this whole inward dimension we were just practicing down from head to toe to be part of the pose as you lift your chest. So then place your hand wherever you're gonna do it. So we're trying to get this inward dimension. So there's a downward energy, apana this way, even as my chest lifts and I twist. So I'm finding it. I'm finding a sense of balance down through my core as I lift my sternum up and twist my spine. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. And then come on back to center. Be in the center. So even, and then you're gonna lean over. So even as we started this like this, right? Part of the headstand comes when you straighten the arm. When I'm like this, I don't feel what I could feel in headstand. When I straighten my arm, I can feel, and I rotate up, I can feel apana as I'm extending beyond my fingertips. As my energy's going up this way, I'm going down. And then come on up. So Bhikkhu Iyengar talks about, he calls it the different sheaths of awareness. So imagine you've got different moving parts, like a current on top, a current underneath, multiple currents happening in multiple directions, even when the outer bodies move in one direction. Okay, that's what's happening here. Go to the first side. There's one current when I'm stretching, but now I want to get the inside of it when I straighten my arm. Now my shoulder blade's going down, and even though my arm's not bent, right, I'm trying to get that energy in the pose. Different directions happening at different levels of current. And you breathe for all of them. Good, and then come on back to center. And then forward onto a forearm. hand behind your back. I want this one to be gentle. So I'm actually even grabbing my knee with my palm. This one, I want a gentle twist. Being aware of the inside, which usually takes intensity, right? So there's a reason, hold on one second, come back up. When you're upside down and you're fighting against gravity, there's a forced intensity by the fear of falling, right? So that's part of why inversions are taught upside down, where movement of energy from here to here are taught upside down. So come forward again. So you're turning, right? But you're like, now this twist has got more grounded energy in it. So make it gentle, right? But the intensity on the inside is still there, where the apana from head to toe is happening. Lots of focus as the outer body's turning. So the goal isn't to crank the twist too far. The goal is to have the multiple layers of stream, right? So now you're going the other way, going down, revolving, starting to twist open, lengthening, feeling that apana as you're lifting the chest and stuff. Good, and then come on back to the middle. Be in the middle. No matter what, there's always compression, right? So now I want you to, whether it's on your table or against your shins, I just want you to very gently make space in your back and breathe for it. Remember, we're exploring what concentration and focus means. And what that means is not just putting all of you into the same current, right? There's multiple currents. And the concentration is to allow the diversity in currents. It's not to focus it into one current. That's what the mind does, not consciousness. So as you sit in a position like this before Shavasana, try to feel the movement of energy both down from your head to your feet and from your feet up to your head. Let them be simultaneous. Breathe. Good, and then come on back up. Again, practice a little bit of the symmetry before Shavasana, right? So I got both hands, a hand on each leg, where each sitting bone is, where each foot is, right? And I'm trying to be equal from side to side. Softening even before I go fully into Shavasana, trying to soften my face and things. So by the time I come into whatever your Shavasana position is going to be, I've already started the process. Okay, and then get yourself in the position you're going to be. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. Relax around the temples, the jaw, the inside of your mouth. Feel your breath. Don't change it. Thank your body. Use relief to thank your body. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, open your eyes slowly. If you want to close them again, definitely do so. And then open them. Let the light in, and as the light comes more in, use your inhalation. All right, everybody. Hands together. If you can. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you. Have a wonderful day, wonderful week. And I will stay on if there are any comments or questions or reactions. Otherwise, keep on keeping on and enjoying the week. See you later.